Hi there, and welcome back. In this video I want to show you how you can actually create your own SketchUp extensions. That of course requires the understanding of the Ruby language, and this can be quite involved, but I'm going to approach it from a very basic standpoint where I show you in just a few lines of code and files how the basics of that works. Then later on, as you learn more, you can of course push this much further, but in simple terms and for the beginner, this is an intro to creating your SketchUp extension. All right, more on that in just a minute. Don't forget to check out my book, Architectural Design with SketchUp. It covers all of these topics and makes for a great desk reference. You can find it where books are sold. There's also a link to it on my site, sketchupfordesign.com, together with lots of additional tutorials and news. Okay, let's get started. Now, there's a few things that you need to start off. So using SketchUp Pro here, extensions only work in SketchUp Pro or the installed version of SketchUp, whether it's Windows or Mac, doesn't matter, but it has to be that version. The web version does not use extensions. So you won't be able to use it if that is all you have access to. But if you have access to SketchUp Pro, then that's the first thing you're gonna need. Number two is we need some way to edit code, Ruby code, and I'm going to use my Ruby code editor extension. You can download it easily. You could just go to Extension Warehouse and find the Ruby code editor, and then you can install it, and then you get this interface here where you can edit code, where you can run code, and that's what we're going to use to create our first extension. All right, so then we've got the editor and the environment already. Now there's a little shortcut that I have for you, which is on my website, sketchupfordesign.com, which is the companion website to my SketchUp book, of course. And on that website, if you go to the book menu here, under the appendices, you can, under Appendix B, find the sample Ruby extension template as a zip file. So go over there, download myextension.zip, and save it somewhere on your hard drive. And then, of course, you want to take the files that are in that out of there and, place it somewhere where you can open and edit those. Now, let me just quickly show you how those the contents of that zip file look like. There's going to be, and I already dumped this into my other extensions, so ignore the rest here, but there's going to be a file in the main folder that's called myextension.rb. It's a Ruby file. They always have a .rb ending, and so that's that. And then there's a folder there right here, my extension. And then when you double click that, you get here, and there's my extension file in there. There shouldn't be a backup file yet, just this one here, .rb. All right, so that's how the structure of, let me go back here, of this sample template looks like. And you'll just have to, download it, and you can place it somewhere so that we can open it from that location in a second. Now there's, of course, basics of Ruby that you may want to know. And I can only refer you to the best source that's out there, which is my book, Architectural Design with SketchUp, and the Chapter 7 scripting chapter. So that's where I cover intro to the Ruby language in general terms and the SketchUp API in specific terms. And so that's a good background for that and for learning that. There's a bunch of examples in there and so on and so forth. So in any case, let me give you that as a reference of sorts, and then of course the template you can just download from right here. Okay, back to SketchUp. All right, so let's take a look what those two files do. Remember, there was the one main file, and then there was the file in the subfolder. All right, so let me start with the main file. And I placed mine right here. It's called myextension.rb, and I'm just going to open it. In principle, the way that these extensions work is that there's a loader file that loads the actual extension and registers it with SketchUp, and that then, let me go to, just show you here, Extension Manager, that then makes them show up in Extension Manager and function properly within SketchUp Pro. So you do need that loader file to load the extension, and then you can actually have multiple extension files in that subfolder, and for some users I actually have other files. I have HTML files and so on in some of mine as well. So you can put a ton of stuff in there as you need it, but in principle that's how it works. Loader file in your main plugins directory, and then in the subfolder there's going to be the actual extension file. All right, so this is the loader file right here, the myextension.rb. And you may want to rename it to something that makes sense for you. So typically what I do is I put my initials at the very beginning here. So in my case, that would be AS, and then extension would be whatever it is, whatever it does, just give it a name. And then within this file here, let me just walk you through this. And of course, this is really just a bare bones template, but you can add more as you need or as you want. So everything up here between begin and end is just a comment, and this is just my version of a little header here. Has no bearing on how this works or how well this works. So I'll just modify as needed, but usually what I do is I of course put the author there, basically the name, whatever this thing does, dates, change history, all of that stuff. So that can go up here, but in terms of function, that's not required. Then when we go down here, you see it requires SketchUp and it requires extensions. So those are basically just the frameworks that need to be required to have this run. And that just goes right up top. And then below that, and you see here, I'm already at the end of the file, this is all we're gonna need. All right, so there's a little organization bit here that you need to know. Basically, what you need to do is your extension needs to be wrapped in what's called its own namespace. So you do that by defining a module with your particular extension name. And then everything that you create within the extension lives within this namespace that this module defines. So mine is now called this extension. Obviously you will give it a different name, but that's the namespace for my extension. And then what I like to do as well is I like to wrap that into one that's for all mine, just in case I ever want to do, some code that applies to all of them, then I can do that. So in any case, so this is basically an outside wrapper and this is like an inside wrapper, but you have to have at least one of these, because otherwise the many extensions that you may load, and you see here I got a few in my SketchUp as well, may conflict with each other, and that's not good. So don't just dump code in there, always wrap it in your own module. But in terms of naming, you can name it anything, it has to start with a capital letter. And I like to always start with my initials as well, just to keep things clean and clear. Okay, so now we've got these two modules defined right here. And then within that, I can finally get to the actual code. So then this code here, you don't have to worry too much about it. You just gotta, fix for your setup. So in other words, the loader creates an extension, has to have a name right here. So then that should be something recognizable for you. And then the file format and file naming, that basically goes into the subfolder and then loads that first file that it finds in the subfolder. That needs to be exactly your setup too. So just edit this as needed. All right, then copyright makes sense, creator makes sense, version makes sense, description, just add it as needed. All of this is the stuff that shows up if you go to Extension Manager. And then at the end here, you just simply say register extension, And then this my extension loader is, of course, this variable right here, this entire thing that we just used for a few things. And at that point, that is all you need to do to register an extension. So in terms of the loader file, you're done. This is all you need. Just basically edit, mostly initials, and then you get yourself your loader code already done. Okay, that's step one. Now, what the real fun is of course in the actual extension. So I'm going to move this here. So now I'm going to go into that subfolder right here, my extension. And again, that could be whatever you want to call it. And then there's this my extension file right there. All right, so this is now where the actual code goes for your SketchUp extension. And when you look at the code here, there's again, we have to require the SketchUp, framework basically, but then everything below is the main code. But what you see here too is everything is wrapped in these modules, because I still need to keep all my stuff. This is all my stuff down here within the namespace that I defined for my extension. And so then you see here, I have basically the namespace for the extension, and then I have the namespace for all of my extensions right here. So that's how I organize mine, but at the very least you have to wrap it in your own namespace so that there's no conflict. And this of course has to be the same as in the last file, so that it's all in the same namespace. And then within that module, basically you define methods, do something, make SketchUp do something. This is just a basic definition. You can give it any kind of name. My method is a good one. And then what we also want to be able to do is, of course, we will want to be able to call that somehow. So we want to be able to go to a menu item and click it and have it do something. So then what we're doing down here is basically that we're defining menu items. And you can kind of read it here. It basically looks for the plugins menu, which is the extensions menu. That's just kind of the same thing. But you could also use any of the other, or most of the other menus, simply by typing in the name. And then you're adding a submenu. Again, give it a title. And in that submenu, because it's now assigned to this variable, we're going to add an item, my tool one. And then I'm simply copying from up here, self my method, right there. Basically then, if I click on my tool one, that does that up here. So that actually is already loaded here. And you can see there's my extension, there's my tool one, my tool two. If I click this, the code that would be defined up here is run. Okay, so that's how that works. And down here, you can just kind of see, well, unless this file has been loaded, and file is the variable for this actual file, my extension file right here. Do all of this, and then afterwards say that file is loaded, and then at that point you won't create many more menu entries. Okay, so that's that, and now I have to find my menu. And of course you can define toolbars and all of that kind of stuff, but again, this falls under the later category. Okay, so now we need to do something, and now here you can basically replace what's there with any code you want. So that can be very short, or it can be very involved. It's completely up to you. When you work with the SketchUp API, obviously, you most probably will have seen the API documentation. And I refer to that quite a bit from that chapter in my book as well, because everything in SketchUp is defined in here. And then, of course, SketchUp and layout, actually, as you can see here, you can call layout functions too. And then from in here, you can then click something like the HTML dialog, and you can find all these methods. And then, of course, down here is always some sample code. And then the sample code, you can simply copy go over here, paste, and then we want to clean this up a little bit so the tab function works really well right there. And now I got myself basically a method that creates a new dialog. And of course you can give it a bunch of parameters here, but it will just simply open the SketchUp website. Now that's most probably an HTTPS right there. So that's how you can code now. Or you can do other shortcuts for that, or you can write basic Ruby code right here. If you're in my Ruby code editor, you can say message box, for example, and you get yourself a message box, and you can actually get rid of all of these options there, and we're going to just say hello world. So that's now in my second method. So first method at this point opens a SketchUp website in a window, and the second one says hello world. All right, now it's time to test this, and what I like to do is just simply run it. By running it, you can basically test most of this kind of code. Now it created a second menu entry here because I reran the code. But then when I do my tool 1, there's the SketchUp website. Now when I, oops, wrong one. When I do my tool 2, I get my hello world dialog. All right. So again, the content of these, you can go crazy and write whatever you need to write. But at this point, this thing is done, is valid, and I could just tweak it and do all of those kind of things. But in terms of an extension, this is actually done. So I'm just going to save it right now. And now I'm ready to package the extension. Oops. Actually, let me just quickly switch over there. Right, yep. All right, so now let's assume we're done with our extension. Now we're going to need to take two things from wherever you saved the extension file. One is, again, this loader file, myextension.rb, or whatever you named it. And then the other one is that subfolder that, in my case, is called myExtension, and that has the actual extension file in it. So next step is combine both as a zip file. So I'm going to just simply highlight those, and I'm going to say right-click and compress as zip file. Your operating system may have different shortcuts or tools or whatever. There's different ways you can create that, but that's one way. And now I have what I just highlighted as a zip file. So I'm just going to go into it just to show you what there is. So right here, loader file. And the menu structure, or basically the file structure, has to be exactly the same as what I had before. So there has to be a folder in there. And within that folder, there has to be the main file. I can actually take my backup file and just delete those. That one's not needed anymore. Okay, so now we're good here. I go back out of this. And now you have yourself a packaged SketchUp extension. Now, the zip ending here, while it is actually being recognized, isn't the default way to distribute a SketchUp extension. So now what we're going to do is we're going to rename this thing, and we're going to actually change the ending. And this is something where you may need to change your adjust your view settings in your file viewer here, so that you can actually see these endings. But basically what we're doing is I'm just editing zip to R, B, and Z. I'm going to hit enter. And yes, because we're getting a little hackish around here. And now you get yourself an RBZ file that will always load into SketchUp, because now all you need to do is take that file and then under extensions, extension manager, see if it opens up. Everything's getting very slow right here right now. But under extension manager, there is a button. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to open, but there is a button that says install extension, and then you can basically install the extension right from there, and it'll be installed like any other extension, and it'll be available when you restart SketchUp. And you can, upload it to the extension warehouse. You can distribute it to colleagues or whatever you want to do. Anyways, this is a very, very basic intro to more the file format and the basic functionality of SketchUp extensions, but feel free to push this as far as you want. There are a few extra topics that I cover in the book. There's also how to submit to the extension warehouse, and that you can also scramble these and kind of protect your code and so on and so forth. But other than that, this should give you enough background to get started. And like I said, you can download the basic framework right from my website and get going from there. All right. I really hope this was helpful. And let me know if you have any questions or if you run into trouble with this, but this should get you started, and I hope you can all, create some great SketchUp extensions in the future. All right, have fun with this. Talk to you all soon.